Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are taking a look at a massive piece of financial engineering.
It's pretty comprehensive.
Yeah, we're calling it the Master Book because it really tries to simulate your entire financial life for, the next quarter century?
To 25 years.
So if you're at that point where retirement is, on the horizon, or you're just trying to get a handle on your long-term security, the goal here isn't just about one number.
Right.
The mission for this deep dive is to really understand this interconnected system and, I guess, find the levers, figure out which inputs actually hold the most power over your future.
That's absolutely it. And what we're analyzing here, it's not just some investment tracker.
No.
It's a fully integrated blueprint. The sources show it's designed to deal with tax strategy, health issues, lifestyle decisions, even estate planning.
It's a whole ecosystem.
A financial ecosystem, exactly.
Okay, let's start digging into the sources and see how this thing is actually built.
Well, you can't really forecast anything without a solid foundation.
The assumptions.
The assumptions. They define the entire trajectory. So before you even look 1 year into the future, the tool makes you input all your current assets, your liabilities, basically your net worth today.
Okay, the starting point.
But the real forecasting, that begins when you set the future assumptions. So this model, it uses a baseline inflation rate of 3%. And maybe a bit surprisingly, it assumes a pretty modest 1% annual growth rate for major assets like your house.
Hold on, 1%. 1% annual return on real estate.
Yep.
That feels incredibly conservative. I mean, especially if you look at historical trends in big cities. Did the source material explain that?
It did, yeah. And the 1% is very deliberate. It's meant to de-risk the forecast.
How so?
Well, a lot of planners suggest you should almost isolate your main home from aggressive growth assumptions. You treat it more like a stable asset, a source of liquidity maybe, but not a speculative investment.
So it's a stress test.
It's a stress test. It forces the model to work in a scenario where your home provides shelter, but it isn't, generating this massive windfall.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. It's forcing prudence. Now, structurally, the sources say this isn't just one big spreadsheet. It's an integrated master workbook.
Right.
It gives you a real-time net worth statement.
Right.
And this is crucial. It tracks every single dollar.
Precisely. And the cash flow is simplified into just 2 buckets. You have money being injected, that's your inflow.
And money going out.
And money being sent out, your outflow. That really clear, almost binary view across 25 years is essential for spotting problems.
Like spending more than you're growing.
Exactly. And because it's a living document, the user can adjust pretty much anything. The baseline inflation is 3%, sure, but you could decide for your plan that healthcare inflation is going to run at 5%.
It's adaptive.
It's built to be adaptive.
Okay, let's follow the money then, starting with outflows, so expenses. The categories here are incredibly detailed. Everything from fixed home costs to stuff that's highly adjustable, like vacations.
Or eating out.
Yeah, the granularity is, it's impressive. They track the essentials, but there's also room for contingency funds or buying a new car.
Right.
The key thing here, conceptually, is that the tool forces you to do 2-part tracking for big financial moves.
What do you mean by that?
So if you sell a property, you have to track the commissions and fees as an outflow.
Okay.
Which is then immediately balanced by the inflow of what you actually got from the sale. It just forces accountability.
It does. Now, moving over to the inflow side, this is where tax strategy becomes, paramount, especially for someone heading into retirement.
Yeah, for sure.
The tool very clearly identifies which sources of cash are taxable, like pension income or traditional retirement plan withdrawals, and which are not.
Okay.
This specific sample we're looking at, it uses Canadian accounts. So it refers to the RSP, which is like a traditional 401k in the U.S.
And the TFSA?
And the TFSA, the tax-free savings account, which is, pretty similar to a Roth IRA.
That distinction is so important. So what's the core strategy that's being modeled here?
The main goal is just balancing the books. Your cash inflow has to mathematically match your expense column.
Right.
But the strategy is to draw down that taxable RSP money first, and only supplement it with the non-taxable TFSA funds when you absolutely have to.
Why that order?
To keep the overall tax burden low, the goal is long-term tax optimization. By hitting the taxable withdrawals first, you manage your tax bracket now and let the non-taxable TFSA funds grow for as long as possible, completely untouched by future income tax.
So it's not just about surviving for 25 years.
No.
It's about minimizing the government's cut over 25 years.
That's the real game.
So the sources mentioned specific tax breakouts. What did they show about the plan's sensitivity to tax?
They showed that the model dynamically adjusts the tax rate based on how much income you withdraw.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. For instance, the plan modeled a $60,000 income being taxed at, I think, 11%, and a higher income of $85,000 getting taxed at 16% or 17%.
And the takeaway isn't the exact percentage.
Exactly. It's the fact that the forecast has to include those fluctuating marginal rates. You can't just use one static number. It stops you from being blindsided by a huge tax bill in a year where you might need to pull out a bit more cash.
Okay, here's where the numbers stop being abstract and, start affecting your daily life. The expense line items, they're not just pulled out of thin air. They use detailed backup data from real-world scenarios. It really forces you to face the true cost of convenience.
It does.
The backup data compares, well, everything. The financial difference between renting and owning.
The cost of running an EV versus a big SUV.
Right, and even these really precise monthly estimates for groceries and health.
But the most striking example, the one that I think best illustrates the behavioral part of this, is the cost comparison between cooking at home and eating at restaurants.
Okay, let's hear it.
The data is, it's pretty eye-opening. A single chicken meal that costs you somewhere between $18 and $28 at a restaurant.
Yeah.
You can make that at home for about $4 to $5. That massive difference, when you extrapolate it out, it shows that some of these discretionary choices are actually the most vulnerable and most costly variables in your whole long-term plan.
I'd have to challenge that a little bit. I mean, the savings are huge, I get it. But does the tool actually account for the time cost? The meal planning, the shopping, the cooking?
That is a great question.
Or is it just dollars and cents?
By design, it focuses purely on the financial output. It's highlighting the direct opportunity cost.
So it doesn't put a dollar value on your time?
No, but it forces you to ask that critical question. Is the convenience of that $28 meal really worth giving up $24 of your financial runway?
Ooh.
Especially when you multiply that decision by, say, 3 times a week for 25 years.
Oof. When you put it like that, it puts the focus squarely on behavior. It shows that these small changes, if you sustain them, can easily have a bigger impact than, chasing an extra 1% on your investments.
Exactly. This level of detail, it just encourages that critical assessment. When you see the cumulative cost of alcohol or clothing or eating out, you can identify some low-hanging fruit for optimizing your budget, and it doesn't have to feel like this huge deprivation, just an intelligent redirection of your capital.
Okay, so now we get to the culmination of all this. The 25-year net worth forecast.
A big picture.
The big picture. And the baseline scenario, which is based on that conservative 1% house return, 5% on investments, and 3% inflation. It resulted in a future net worth of $1.737 million.
And to interpret that number, we have to talk about the time value of money.
Right, inflation.
Yeah. The model gives a factor. In this case, it was 2.09. And this is critical because, $1 million 25 years from now won't buy what $1 million buys today.
So what does the 2.09 mean?
It means you have to divide that future value by 2.09 to translate it back into today's buying power.
So roughly $800,000 to $900,000 in today's dollars, which is, a pretty healthy outcome. But the real value, like you said earlier, is being able to stress test that number.
Absolutely. The baseline, that gives you hope. The stress test, that's what gives you security. This simulation feature lets you change those core assumptions to see just how fragile your plan might be.
Okay, let's look at the scenarios from the source. First, that investment assumption, 5% return. Given all the market volatility, is that the right place to start?
Well, the sources confirm 5% is a pretty widely accepted, moderate long-term average, but it is definitely not guaranteed.
Of course not.
And that's exactly why these simulations are so necessary. So let's look at what they called Scenario 3, dropping the investment return, including on the TFSA, from 5% down to 4%.
Just 1%.
Just 1%. And that single percentage point drop caused the final net worth to fall pretty substantially, down to $1.732 million.
Wow. Okay, now let's look at the other big levers. Scenario 1 was raising that really conservative house return from 1% to 2%. That seemingly tiny adjustment sent the final net worth soaring, all the way up to $2.275 million.
It's a gain of over $500,000.
Based on changing one assumption by 1%. It's staggering.
And then conversely, Scenario 2 showed the risk from outside factors, moving the inflation rate up from 3% to 4%.
The other direction.
Right. And that caused the net worth to drop significantly, down to $1.982 million. It just demonstrates the incredible compounding power of a single 1% shift, whether it's positive or negative, when you apply it across a 25-year timeline.
So if we connect this all back to the bigger picture.
This simulation capability, this is the ultimate source of security. You are empowered to adjust your behavior today because you can see the quantifiable long-term impact of things that might happen, like sustained high inflation or just a few bad years in the market.
So what does this all mean at the end of the day?
I mean,
It means effective retirement planning is just so much more than the basics. The most powerful tools, they integrate every single aspect of your financial life.
from what you eat for dinner.
From your daily habits to your long-term tax strategies, all in one interconnected, adaptable model.
It just reaffirms that financial security comes from understanding that sensitivity. The difference between feeling secure and feeling anxious often just comes down to making the consequences of your choices visible.
Consequences of the small choices.
Whether it's an optimized withdrawal or, just choosing the $4 chicken meal instead of the $28 one, the simulation showed that a mere 1% change in your house return, or in the general inflation rate, had this staggering multi-million-dollar impact on the 25-year forecast. And this, I think, raises an important question for you, the listener. When you're modeling your own future, which single overlooked 1% assumption in growth and inflation, or maybe in reducing an expense, do you think is currently the most vulnerable lever in your long-term plan?